He was jailed for 27 years. When he was finally free, he forgave his enemies and led his country to peace. Who was this man? Welcome back to our English Learning Podcast, where you improve your English by listening to powerful real-life stories. Today's episode is about one of the most iconic leaders of the 20th century, Nelson Mandela. He started as a young rebel. He spent decades in prison, and when the world expected revenge, he gave them reconciliation. This is the story of a man who transformed South Africa and inspired the world. So grab your headphones, listen closely, and stick around until the end for a mini English lesson based on today's story. Part 1. The Boy from the Village. Nelson Mandela was born in 1918 in a small village called Mvezo in South Africa. His birth name was Rolilala, which in his native language, Hosa means pulling the branch of a tree, or more symbolically, troublemaker. From a young age, Mandela stood out. He was curious, bold, and always interested in stories about African history and resistance. As a child, he heard tales of African kings and warriors who had fought against colonialism. Those stories shaped his dreams. When Mandela was a teenager, his father died, and he was sent to live with a tribal chief. That's when he first began to understand leadership, responsibility, and politics. Part 2. Education and Awakening. Mandela studied at several universities, including the University of Fort Hare and the University of Witwatersrand. During his time as a student, he became more aware of the injustice in South Africa. At that time, South Africa was ruled under a system called apartheid, a brutal form of racial segregation. White people, who were the minority, controlled the government, the economy, and most of society. Black people, like Mandela, had few rights and no power. Mandela joined the African National Congress, ANC, in 1944. He believed that the black majority had to fight back. At first, he believed in peaceful protest marches, speeches, and petitions. But the government responded with violence. Peaceful protesters were arrested, beaten, and even killed. Part 3. Turning to Resistance. After years of being ignored and mistreated, Mandela changed his approach. In the 1960s, he helped form an armed wing of the ANC called Umkhonto we Sizwe, which means Spear of the Nation. He didn't enjoy violence. In fact, he once said, "I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society. It is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." But he believed that without resistance, nothing would ever change. In 1962, Mandela was arrested. 2 years later, in the famous Rivonia trial, he was sentenced to life in prison. Part 4 to 27. Years in a Cell. Mandela spent most of his 27 years behind bars on Robben Island, a prison off the coast of Cape Town. The conditions were harsh. Prisoners worked in a limestone quarry. They were only allowed a few visits and letters a year. But Mandela used that time wisely. He read books, he studied law, he taught younger inmates, and most importantly, he stayed mentally strong. He became a symbol of the anti-apartheid struggle. Around the world, people chanted, "Free Nelson Mandela." Even though the government tried to silence him, his ideas continued to grow. Part 5. Freedom and Forgiveness. In 1990, under growing pressure, the South African government released Mandela. He was 71 years old. The world expected him to seek revenge, but instead, Mandela called for peace and reconciliation. He worked with the very people who had once jailed him. He believed that only dialogue, not revenge, could build a better future. In 1994, Nelson Mandela became the first black president of South Africa. It was a moment that many thought they would never live to see. He served one term, then stepped down, focusing on peace efforts around the world. He promoted education, Hawaii 5 awareness, and human rights. Part 6. A Legacy That Lives On. Mandela passed away in 2013 at the age of 95, but his words, his wisdom, and his courage still live on. He showed the world that even after decades of suffering, it is possible to choose forgiveness over hatred, to choose unity over revenge. Mini English lesson. learn from Mandela's story. Now, let's learn some useful English from today's episode. Here are 5 key expressions and grammar points. 1. From a young age. This phrase means since childhood. Example, from a young age, he wanted to be a leader. 2. Stand out. To be different or noticeable in a positive way. Example, he stood out in school for his intelligence. 3. Turn to. Something. To start using or doing something different, often after something else fails. Example, after peaceful protests failed, Mandela turned to armed resistance. 4. Behind bars. This is a common phrase, meaning in prison. Example, he spent 27 years behind bars. 5. Conditional structure. If. Mandela's quote, "If I didn't leave my bitterness behind, I would still be in prison." This is a second conditional. It shows an imaginary or hypothetical situation in the present. If plus past tense, would plus base verb. So, what did you learn from Mandela's story? Not just English, but the power of hope, forgiveness, and resilience. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on subtitles in your language. And tell us in the comments, who inspires you the most and why? Thanks for listening, and see you in the next episode of Learn English Through Stories.